Mickey Rowe has had a prolific and varied career as an actor, director, consultant, and public speaker, and is highly sought after nationally and internationally. He was the first autistic actor to play Christopher Boone, the lead role in The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. This also made him the first openly autistic actor ever to play any autistic role in a professional performance setting. He has also appeared in the title role in Amadeus and more. Rowe has been featured in the New York Times Magazine, PBS, Vogue, Playbill, NPR, CNN, The Wall Street Journal, HuffPost, and Forbes. He has keynoted at the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, the Kennedy Center, Yale University, Columbia University, and others. Mickey was the founding artistic director of National Disability Theater, which works in partnership with Tony Award-winning companies such as La Jolla Playhouse in San Diego and the Goodman Theater in Chicago. Laurie Frankel is the New York Times best-selling award-winning author of 4 novels, including her most recent one, 1, 2, 3, and This Is How It Always Is. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, The Guardian, Publishers Weekly, People Magazine, Lit Hub, the Sydney Morning Herald, and other publications. She is a recipient of the Washington State Book Award, the Endeavor Award. Her novels have been translated into more than 25 languages and have been optioned for film and TV. A former college professor, she now writes full-time in Seattle, Washington, where she lives with her family and makes good soup. Please join me in welcoming Laurie Frankel and Mickey Rowe.
Hello. I should pick this up. Hello, hello. Thank you guys so much for being here today.
Oh, forgot all about
that. Oh, me too. I should get a sip.
You should, yeah. Hi, all. Thank you for being here. I forgot how to walk in heels. I forgot how to sit in chairs. I feel like I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to acknowledge that this is lots of people's first event back, and it's really good to see you all in person. So it's, and we also want to welcome everyone online. You're in our hearts, even though we are not looking at your faces. And I want to say congratulations to Mickey.
Thank you so much.
Whose first book was published today and is already in its 3rd printing. I mean, this thing has been out for like half an hour and it's already in its 3rd printing.
Yeah, so it is super exciting, but also unexpected that we don't even have physical books at this event like we were expecting to have, because you all have done such an amazing job. Everyone here and everyone online and just everyone in our community and the autism community sold the initial run of the book out through pre-orders alone. So we weren't even able to get any books for the event today because they sold out the first run, but they printed a second run a month ago that'll be mailing out soon, and a 3rd run last week. But Third Place Books has been so incredible that if you scan the QR code to purchase the book today, they will email you an e-reader version of the book immediately, so you don't need to wait for your book to be mailed to you. And if you put in the comments that you want a personalization or want the book signed, I will make sure that I get to Third Place Books to sign and personalize any books before they mail them out to you as well. And they'll be mailing them out super soon because I know they're printing the books day and night to try to get them to you all as fast as they can.
Yes. And in the meantime, you have swag.
I do, and so that people don't have to leave empty-handed, I also have little thank you presents for everyone at the front of the stage. So please, on your way out, help yourself to those, and then hopefully you can also have an e-reader version of the book by the time you get home or tomorrow morning.
Yeah. And we were chit-chatting backstage instead of paying attention to the introduction, so I don't know whether they told you that we're taking questions via this QR code. So people at home, you should send questions to this iPad that I have here, and people sitting here, you should also send questions to this iPad that I have here.
And before we go on, also, I wanted to make sure everyone knew I'm Mickey Rowe speaking, and my pronouns are he, him. And also, if there's anyone here in the room today or anyone online, participating who is blind or low vision, please know that I'm a white man with brown hair, I have glasses on, I'm wearing a blue suit, and I'm here sitting in a green chair next to Laurie.
Yes, yes, and I'm a white woman. My hair used to be black back when I used to do book events, and over this pandemic, it has turned to this color.
Pandemics do that, don't they?
Pandemics do that, yes. And I am she/her pronouns, and I have blue glasses on. They might look black, but they're actually navy. Okay. That's all by way of introduction. The point is, ask a lot of questions. That said, I have a lot of questions. I don't think we're going to run out of things to talk about.
That sounds good.
Usually I'm up here interviewing novelists, and so I'm trying not to spoil the ending. Your book does this incredibly beautiful job of telling us what it's about, really from the cover, really right from the title.
Thank you.
And then from its very first pages, making this really incredibly beautiful argument and a really simple argument, which is not just that your differences are your strengths, but my differences are my strengths, and that your successes come not despite, but rather because of these differences and indeed disabilities. So I thought, gosh, we should start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that so frequently people want so desperately to fit in that they really forget what makes them stand out, right? And so I wrote this book really, really hoping that it gave people courage enough to stand out and to remember and value the things that make them stand out. And I think also so frequently people with disabilities can be unintentionally told by society that they are a burden, which simply is not true. I'm sure this is not just I'm sure that this is not only true for the disability community. I'm sure there are so many communities where people feel that way, but I can speak to my experience only from the disability community, and it is fairly consistent that people from the disability community are unintentionally told by society that they are a burden. So I really wanted to use this book to make sure that both disabled and non-disabled people knew that that is not true. You are not a burden. Whether you're disabled or not, your differences are your strengths. And truly, when you are brave and give all of yourself to the world, you're giving the world such a huge gift when you share all of yourself, including the things that you think might be your weaknesses or might make you bad or stupid or whatever. The things that make you different truly are your strengths, and you're giving the world such a gift by sharing those. So that's why I wanted to write this book partly.
And you did such a beautiful job. You did such a beautiful job of, it's a very convincing book, among other things. It's really compelling. I'm a theater geek. So in fact, when Mickey and I first met, I was very shy and embarrassed because I had lots of questions, about what it is like to be on stage. And this book does a beautiful job of talking about that, but it's also a really good example, so it's a good place for us to get specific about how exactly it is that autism proves to be an extraordinary strength for actors and for you on stage playing an autistic character, but also just being on stage in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I'll start in general, and then we can talk
Work
about
our way up, yeah.
in autism specifically why I think it's a helpful thing. But yeah, in general, as an actor, I think as an autistic person, me and so many autistic people have been acting our whole life. Like, we need to act our whole lives to try to pass as neurotypical, as a survival mechanism. So my whole life I've been trying to analyze other people's behavior, figure out what they're doing and why they're doing, and try to act in a way that shows that I am like them. So that is such a good daily practice in acting. I think also as autistic people, it is so helpful to have a role.
Yeah.
From the time I was really little, I was always either dressing up like a clown or dressing up like a pirate. I think there was a period in time when I wouldn't really leave the house even unless I was dressed up as a clown. Yeah. And so, because it gave me a role. Because if I could be a clown or a pirate or a character of some kind, that told me how to interact with the world. It gave me rules, and it gave me sort of a structure for here is how you're supposed to interact with people. Even street performing, it gives you a structure. Here's your role, here's how you're supposed to interact with people. Whereas if you and I passed on the street, there aren't those rules, there aren't those roles, and it can be very uncomfortable for an autistic person because we can't intuit how to navigate that kind of social interaction. So in theater, it's so nice because you are given a specific role to play. You know what that role is. Everyone around you also has a specific role that they have, even if it's stage manager, director. You are told where to stand and what to say, and it makes things incredibly predictable that everything is the same night to night, which I think is so great for an autistic person. Also, as an autistic person, I've had to be vulnerable my whole life. Autistic people don't really have a choice, I think, in that regard, because autistic people are constantly trying to get human connection so deeply and trying so hard to make that happen, but we fail so often and are vulnerable so often in those failures. And so we just get very used to being vulnerable, which means that being vulnerable on stage in front of a bunch of people is so easy. I'll give one final example, I guess, which is that a lot of autistic people also use scripting. Some autistic people, there's something called echolalia, which is where they might like to communicate by using movie quotes or things that they've seen on TV, or song lyrics, or just repeating something they heard someone else say. But I, for myself, script all the time. So like if I go to a coffee shop, right? I might say to the barista, "Hi, how are you doing today? Can I please have a small coffee?" And if it seems like more conversation is needed, I can then say, "Has it been busy today?" And then no matter what the barista says, if they say, "Yes, it's been busy," or "No, it's been slow," I can then respond with, "Oh, would you like it better when it's busy or slow?" So I use scripting every day in my daily life. And so it's, again, such great practice because it's the exact same thing I'm doing on stage, where I'm using a script but trying to convince everyone that this is my first time saying these things and that I'm coming up with these words on the spot.
Okay, I am so compelled by this. This sounds so right to me that I was stunned reading the book at all of the barriers that you found to auditioning and to accessibility in rehearsal and really in the whole audition process, and also like once you're working with a group of people that wasn't necessarily supportive. I'm surprised in part because theaters aim to be so inclusive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do, don't they? Often, or they try to be. They feel.
They say.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is complicated and disappointing, and it's so hard. I think in life we can all relate to trying to find communities of allyship and trying to find safe communities, and it's so hurtful it feels so hurtful when we misjudge which communities are going to be safe and which communities are going to be allies. I feel like it hurts even more if I assume a room's not a safe space and there's not going to be any allies in the room. Fine, that's what I knew coming into it. But the Ruderman Family Foundation and the Ford Foundation actually did studies on disability in theater and film and on TV, and they found that so few characters that we see are disabled. It was 1% when I wrote the book. I think now it's up to 2%. So we made that's like twice as much improvement. Totally. But 1 or 2% of characters we see are disabled. Compare that to what the CDC tells us that the census tells us 20% of the population has a disability, and the CDC says 25%. So many people have disabilities, but only 1 or 2% of characters have those disabilities. And then of that 1 or 2% of characters that have disabilities, 95% of those are played by non-disabled actors, which is super frustrating.
Yes, it's super frustrating.
And I think it shows, it's especially frustrating because representation is so, so vital and so important, And I really think the world, especially disabled young people, need to see role models who can tell them that if you are different, if you access the world differently, if you're disabled, the world needs you.
Yeah.
And when we can't even include disabled folks in the telling of their own stories,
Right.
it really doesn't help to accomplish this.
Yeah.
Theaters, I think, also are working so hard to, make their audiences maybe sometimes more accessible at certain times for disabled folks and for autistic folks, doing things like sensory-friendly performances maybe, or relaxed performances. And what they need to realize now is we don't just want to be audience members,
Yeah.
we want to be employed.
Yeah.
And we want to have an active role in telling the public stories that shape public perception around our group.
Yeah. It's especially strange to me because theaters are so good about, again, at least talking about diversity, aiming for diversity, especially in the last year or so, for obvious and very good and important reasons. I wonder if you have thoughts about why disability is not diversity.
Yeah, that's a complicated question, and I think what it is, partially, is that the disability community, up until super recently, has been really isolated from each other. You know, I'll give an example from when I was working at La Jolla Playhouse, and we were doing a show with National Disability Theater. And during the auditions and workshops, lots of people in the first workshop even were brought to tears because they realized it was their first time ever being in a room working with other people with disabilities.
Okay, wait, you got to tell everybody what National Disability Theater is. You got to brag on this one a little bit.
So National Disability Theater, I was the founding artistic director of National Disability Theater, which partners with regional theaters around the country to produce theater that is directed by, designed by, acted by, written by professional disabled artists and performers, which is super awesome. I stepped down, a year ago, what is time with the pandemic? a year or two ago or 2 years ago, because I felt that it was really important to make sure that we were also representing diversity within the disability community. So I stepped down requesting to be replaced by a BIPOC disabled artistic director, because I thought that was super important, and the only way that we will actually people will start to truly embrace the disability community as part of the diversity conversation too. So that's what NDT was. But in this room during that first workshop, people were in tears because for so many people it was their first time being in a room with other disabled adults. I mean, think about that. As a disabled adult, for this to be one of your first times being in another room with other disabled adults, because unlike other groups, often people with disabilities are the only ones in their family with a disability. It is often harder for us to leave the house or find transportation that's accessible or go to other places. So we just have not, as a community, really formed community within each other, which I think is why the disability community has been slightly slower in being able to get a seat at this conversation. But really recently, because the internet is so accessible, the internet is super accessible for so many people with disabilities, and especially this younger generation on TikTok, I have just seen the community and conversations taking off in ways I've never seen before. So I have so much faith that things are going to be changing really soon, thanks to this younger generation of disability advocates on TikTok and on all the other interwebs. I sound like an old man. All the other interwebs, really finding community in an accessible way together.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's a good transition to talk about universal design, which I'd love to hear you talk about, and which is further good news. So as long as we're doing good news, you talk about that too.
So does anyone here know what universal design is already? Amazing. I see some hands. So universal design, basically when we talk about universal design, what we're talking about is how do we plan for accessibility for disabled folks from the beginning? when we are planning events, when we are designing buildings, when we are creating spaces, whether those are physical spaces or community spaces? How do we plan for accessibility from the beginning and try to just make it so that everything is accessible as it can be for everyone, rather than thinking about accessibility as an afterthought, where we've already built the building, we've already designed the event, and then we have to think about, oh shoot, now how are we going to allow disabled folks to have equal access to this? But what I love most about universal design is it really makes all of our lives easier in so many ways. I think about if I'm on a walk with my kids in the stroller, and I'm pushing my kids in the stroller, and there's 2 of them, so it's, and they're large now, so it's a lot, right? I'm going to every single time use the curb cuts, just because it makes my life so much easier with the stroller, right? Curb cuts are necessary so that folks who use wheelchairs or folks who use any accessibility device really can use the sidewalks. But me as someone who doesn't need a wheelchair, doesn't use a wheelchair, and doesn't use crutches, those curb cuts still made my life so much easier. If I'm watching a video on my phone and I'm in a waiting room at a doctor's office, or I'm at the library or on a bus and I forgot my headphones, I can still watch that video because of the captions on that video. Those captions are necessary so that the deaf community and hard of hearing community can watch the video, but they also make my life easier. If I'm going through the airport with my luggage and I'm pulling a rolling suitcase, am I going to take the stairs or am I going to take a ramp? And I'm going to take the ramp every time because it makes my life easier. So that's one of the reasons I love universal design so much. And the other reason why is because the disability community, I think, is truly one of the most equal opportunity minority groups there is. And every single one of us is going to join the disability community at some point in time, should we be lucky enough to live long enough. Anyone could join at any time if we leave the house and get hit by a car. You know, there's so many things that could happen where we could join the disability community at any time. But should we all be lucky enough to be old enough, we will all join this prestigious club at any time. So I really encourage people to think about universal design in terms of helping themselves and helping make their lives easier and their future lives easier too.
Yeah, and it's a really beautiful, I mean, you talk about it so beautifully. It's a really beautiful solution in that it isn't making anyone's life worse, and it is making lots and lots of people's lives better, and therefore it's hard to argue it's hard to find what the arguments are against it. You do spend a lot of time talking about the systems that are in place, and because this is your hometown crowd, our systems that are in place surrounding education and healthcare and family services and employment, policing, that are indeed not only not accessible but also like flat out discriminatory. I mean, much of what you say in this book stunned me.
Yeah, I think on a personal cultural level, right? Oftentimes people feel uncomfortable saying the word disability. How many people here tonight or online have heard something like differently abled before, or heard disabled with the abled all capitalized, or special, right? And people often feel so comfortable around disability that we really do backflips to create euphemisms to avoid talking about disability directly. And I think part of it is that we think disability is a bad thing, or that disabled people must feel a lot of shame for being disabled, which I don't think is true in my experience and from the people who I know and are friends with. But for this reason, you know, if you think about even young people on the street who might look at a disabled person who has a visible disability, and their parent might pull them away and say, oh no, don't look, we don't stare. Or if a young person might ask a disabled person a question about their disability, and we say, oh no, it's rude to ask that, right? And this creates adults who then grow up and feel really, really uncomfortable around disability. So I think that's one of the reasons why disability is so often not thought of, because we feel so much discomfort around it. And maybe it's that we're uncomfortable with the knowledge that we might be disabled one day too, and that's scary. But even structurally, we're all very lucky to live in Washington State because, I'll give an example about minimum wage structurally, but in Washington State now, disabled people are guaranteed a minimum wage just like everyone else. If we work a job, we are guaranteed a minimum wage just like everyone else is. And that happened in Washington State, I think, just right before the pandemic. So we're talking 2 years ago, 3 years ago, is when that changed in Washington State. But nationally still, and in most states, disabled people are not guaranteed a minimum wage. And in fact, there are hundreds of thousands of disabled folks that get paid literal pennies, less than $1 an hour to work. So yeah, it is still very, unfortunately, legal to discriminate against disabled folks in many ways. And I think even hiring, right? Whereas, even though it still happens, people know that it is not right, hopefully, or legal to discriminate against folks for other reasons. It still happens for sure. I'm not saying it doesn't, but hopefully, I'm hoping we are reaching the point where people know it's not okay. I still think with disability, people think that it's only right that we would consider someone's disability status before offering them a job and figure out how to take that into account. Even with my own experience with autism, luckily now so much has changed, but 5 years ago, which is not that long ago, 5 years ago when I was auditioning for Curious Incident, so many people told me that an autistic person could never play the role of Christopher. Theater professionals in our city and in New York told me that an autistic person simply couldn't play that role, that it was too physical, that it was a big show with big words, and that it was just not a show that an autistic person could play. That they wish that they could cast the show with an autistic person, but this role is just not one that an autistic person could play. So yeah, it's super complicated, the ways in which, even though autistic people are so good really for any job, that we still discriminate. I think disabled people, I think, are some of the best creative problem solvers in the whole world, right? Because we have to be creative problem solvers every single day to navigate a world that was not built with us in mind, right? So because of that, I think disabled folks make really good employees, because every job is really about problem solving and creative problem solving when it comes down to it. And this is something disabled folks do so much more frequently, I think, than non-disabled folks. Yeah, I hope that answered the question. I lost track. I went on a ramble.
It super answered the question, and I love hearing you talk about this stuff because you just make it very clear. I think that a lot of our questions are about Curious Incidents, so we'll definitely circle back to that stuff. I don't know. I feel I have lots of questions, but I have. Well, as I told you all, I will theater geek out with you all night long. But before we get there, tell me about. Because also I write books, so I want to ask about that too.
Yeah.
Tell me about writing a book, about how it felt to sit down and write a story that is very personal, a story that is very painful, a story that had to go in lots and lots of different directions. There's a lot of research that went into this, there's a lot of facts, but there's also a lot of personal stuff. And it seems to me to be very different than being on stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the nice thing about being on stage is there's often a release to it, you know? If I'm on stage doing a show, even we were talking about how difficult and weird and traumatic Amadeus felt doing it, and how that was a really exhausting show to do. But even a show that's really hard like that, at the end you get to stand up and a whole room full of people applaud for you, and you get to take a bow. There is so much release when you're doing a show. Whereas when you're writing a book, there isn't that. And you are just left diving into the deep, thinking about things that you really don't want to think about anymore. And it's really, really hard. But I thought it was really important, because we're talking so much about really sort of complex in the weeds ideas right now about disability. Yeah. And what I thought was really, what I tried to do at least, is there are so many brilliant books about disability studies, I should say, by people like Alice Wong and people like Emily Ladow, who I'm going to do events with next month. Really, really great books about disability studies. But I wasn't seeing those books, or I wasn't seeing some of those ideas necessarily get the traction that I would hope they would outside of the disability community, in the general public. And so what I thought as an actor, as a storyteller, as a theater person, is that people really latch on to stories, and that people love stories and storytelling. So if I could tell a really, really, really good story and use that story as a way for people to sort of start getting into these ideas about disability, that maybe non-disabled people would be able to latch onto them and understand them in a way that they wouldn't if it was just a academic text about disability that might get ignored or not read by folks outside of the disability community. So I really tried to do that, and then, yeah.
You did a beautiful job. I mean, you all are so happy that you can go home and start reading this tonight, that you don't have to wait for your book to come in, because I feel like it is very, I mean, it is a book that begs to be started, immediately. It's also dedicated to you, which I can't think of another book I've read that is dedicated to the reader.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, which is a remarkable way to start a book, I think. And it's very uplifting, it's very positive, it's a very warm book right from the beginning. At the end, you end with a 22-page list of names. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. Yeah, let me think about how to do that for just give my brain half a second to catch up. I think the book ends on a really positive note. Before that last chapter, before the list, I think the last chapter is super, super uplifting. I think much of the book is really positive and uplifting. And I tried to be really optimistic throughout the whole book. And also, anytime I presented a problem, hopefully give really, really simple solutions to these problems to make them not feel hard, to make it be like, oh yeah, we can fix this easy. But yeah, something that is just a fact right now, and this was also, I think, the Ruderman Family Foundation and the Ford one or the other. The Ruderman Family Foundation and the Ford Foundation, the big Ford Foundation, are the two places really doing deep dive studies and white papers on disability right now. But there have been lots of studies done that have found that every week a disabled young person is killed by their family members. Every single week, at least once a week, a disabled person is killed by their family members. And when this happens, the narrative, or I should say the media, if the media even covers it, because most of the time the media doesn't cover it, but if the media covers it, they are overwhelmingly supportive and sympathetic to the family members that did the killing, unfortunately. Often saying things like, well, until you've had a disabled child yourself, you can never know how hard it was. Or saying things, well, where was the help for the parents? There should have been more help, and since the parents couldn't get help, it's not their fault. Or even saying things like, it was a mercy killing, that child could not have possibly been happy because they're disabled, and obviously disabled people aren't happy, right? Obviously, we're not happy. So because they were disabled, they must not have been happy, and at least now they don't have to suffer anymore. And I'm gonna ask for, my wife is here, and I'm gonna ask for her assistance, but this is even, locally, this has even been happening. I think just in the last 2 weeks, there have been 2 cases in our area alone where, feel free to jump in if I get a fact wrong here, or if you have more details, but just here where we live, a mother left their child in a car, and they left their child in a car to die. They abandoned a car. They just abandoned a car somewhere with their child in it. Their child was locked in the car somehow to die. The car was then towed, I believe, because it was just an abandoned car that was found. The car was towed somewhere to one of the local places they tow cars. I don't know what those are called. And then somehow, I think after days, how long had the child been locked in the car with no food and water for? So after the child had been locked in this car, in a lot where cars just get smashed, I think eventually the cars are just going to get disposed of. But the child had been in the car 9 days before someone found them. And I think luckily the child lived. So they are unresponsive, but they didn't make it on the list. They were at least, I don't know. Right. But yeah, so in the last 2 weeks, or last 3 weeks, there have at least been 2 cases of this happening in King County. And it doesn't make the news. So I thought, because the book has so many highs in it, so many positive highs, but also really kind of tough lows in the book as well, and because that was a statistic that was mentioned in the book, I thought really the most respectful way I could end the book, if I was going to use that statistic, was to have the list of all the names in the very back of the book for people. So in the very back of the book is the list of the names from the last years that I had access to when writing the book, of all the folks that passed. And March 1st was just Disability Memorial Day, or Disability Day of Mourning, so just 15 days ago, which is the day in the disability community where we get to honor those folks.
It's a really brave and powerful way to end a book that is indeed very uplifting and feels very much like it's talking right to me the whole time, and therefore to end on that note is insisting that the reader pay attention, and I really appreciated it.
Thank you so much.
Yes. I am mindful of all of the questions that we have here, but I don't want to end on this note, which is kind of a sad one.
Absolutely.
I thought you should talk to us about the busking that you did within blocks of this very building. I feel like there are ways in which the streets of Seattle played a significant role in you.
I do, absolutely. I think Seattle plays such a big role in this book in so many ways, but yeah, because as an autistic person, it has been really hard for me to consistently find work, right? Even after Curious and even now, always. It is very hard for autistic people to find work often and consistently. 85% of college graduates on the autism spectrum are unemployed. And so it's been hard for me to find employment, but because of that, I was super lucky that my special interest was stilt walking and juggling and twisting balloons. So I was really lucky that when I couldn't get a job other places, when other folks wouldn't give me a job, I was able to take my stilts and my juggling equipment and my balloons to the farmers markets and to Pike Place Market and Ballard and all these places to stilt walk and street perform, which was really, really nice for me. Also, as an autistic person, often people can feel uncomfortable around autistic people sometimes just because they know something's different about us, but they can't quite figure out what it is. And we're always scared about things that we don't understand. But when I was stilt walking or street performing, I felt like no one felt uncomfortable around me, and everyone who saw me on the street smiled. So I thought maybe, if you would like, I wanted to show you all, I wanted to take us out of a bummer note that we just had. Maybe I would juggle for all of you really quickly as a quick, lighten the mood, and then we can get back to audience questions. Yeah. You think that's okay?
I super do.
Okay, I'm going to do that. And then, yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
And then, Laurie, do you know what the last line of Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime is, the play?
I do, yeah.
What is the last line?
Confetti.
You're right. Oh, my God. I thought you were going to get that right. How did you get that right?
It's not my first time.
We had not even talked about that.
I've seen the show.
You've
twice.
seen the show twice. We had not even talked about that. I thought you were going to say the, Am I still on screen? I thought you were going to say the, does this mean I can do anything? But
No.
I'm so, you knew. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do.
I always stay till the very end. I told you I am a theater geek.
You are so on it.
I am.
Look at how brilliant you are.
I am on it.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to juggle these knives for y'all.
Can I have your...
Yes. I'm going to attempt to juggle these knives for you all. But if I'm doing this for y'all, because I just came here to talk about a book, so if I'm doing this for all y'all, you have to promise, if I succeed at the end, you all are going to applaud as loudly as you can. I know we have a smaller group today, but we're going to make so much noise here if I can juggle these successfully.
I can't wait.
And then, if I succeed, I will yell confetti, like at the end of Curious Incident, and you can shoot the confetti. How does that sound?
Okay, I need an extra hand.
Okay.
Okay, you know what, though?
I'll just yell. I can project. We don't need the mic.
Okay, good, because I don't know how to...
That's okay. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Okay, no, I'm super excited.
See, I promise the book is uplifting and fun. Okay, so I promise it's uplifting and fun. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, gosh. So people often ask me, how sharp are the knives? Is this okay? Oh, that's okay. We're just going to shout and make so much noise. People often ask me, how sharp are the knives? People often ask me, how sharp are the knives? Yeah, a heck of a lot sharper than this audience. No, I'm kidding. Buy the book, I'm kidding. Oh my gosh. Here we go. Juggling the knives. 1, 2, 2.5, 3. Thank you. Exactly. Thank you all so much for entertaining me there and giving us a little break from all this really dense in the weeds talk we've been doing.
You are amazing.
Before we go on.
I got to tell you, I've been to a lot of book events, and none of them, I mean, just none of them have
See, we got to find ways to stand out, huh, Laurie? We got to do it.
Okay. We're gonna do audience Q&A. It's the best part always. So it's usefully geeky, which I love. All right, what was your favorite part of playing Christopher Boone?
My favorite part of playing Christopher Boone was how physical I got to be on stage. Christopher is such a physical role, and as an autistic person, well, one of the reasons that the Broadway production felt they couldn't cast autistic folks in the role, and one of the reasons that they stated publicly often that they couldn't cast an autistic person in the role, which they never did. They never were able to cast an autistic person, even in the national tour, is they said the role was too physical and that autistic people couldn't handle being touched, they thought, or couldn't handle being physical in that way. But as an autistic person myself, there's something called proprioceptive input, which is sometimes why you see autistic folks rocking back and forth or waving their hands around like this, because they're craving that they're craving that proprioceptive input so much. And that's why I love juggling. That's why I love stilt walking and unicycling, and that's why street performing was such a nice way for me to be able to make ends meet when I couldn't get jobs in other ways. And during Curious Incident, I got to be so physical and get all of that proprioceptive input in such incredible, awesome, fun ways. So that, I think, is my favorite part, was my favorite part of playing Christopher.
I wish I had seen it. I wish I had seen it. All right, we've had lots of questions that are good transitions from there. One is, are there other roles you're eager to play?
Yes and no.
Oh.
Yeah. My wife was also a completely brilliant, stellar, professional theater person, actor before the show. Before the pandemic, I apologize. And we've talked often about how the pandemic has changed our perspective in so many ways about theater.
Yes.
Getting to take a break from something being your be-all and end-all for 2 years really shifts your perspectives on things a lot. And my wife is now like the most brilliant personal stylist at Nordstrom, and I think their best digital remote personal stylist. So that was an awesome career change where she really leveled up. And so in that way, I am reconsidering my relationship with theater. But that said, I think my dream roles would be the MC in Cabaret.
Oh.
I would love to play the MC in Cabaret so much. Eddie Redmayne, he gets to do the disabled parts, he gets to do the trans parts, and he gets to play the MC in Cabaret on the West End right now. But I would love it. I shouldn't have said that.
No, you should have said that. That was legit. I didn't know you could sing.
I don't know that I can sing either. I can sing Cabaret. I can sing the MC in Cabaret. Yeah. I was really lucky to get to sing in Tosca at the Seattle Opera when I was little. Yes. When I was when I was 13. I was studying for my bar mitzvah during the day and putting on altar boy. Is that what they're called?
No.
What are they called?
I don't know.
Who wear the red dresses? Anyway.
Maybe they are. Maybe that is.
I think they're altar boys. Yeah. Getting to sing in Tosca at night. And then I've also been really lucky at Seattle Children's Theater, which is the local professional equity theater for young audiences. More recently, when I was in college, I got really lucky to get to sing in High School Musical with them and to sing in The Wizard of Oz with them, which was super fun. So I'm not a singer. I'm not a singer. But if you pay me, I will be happy to attempt to sing for you the best I can.
I will pay you. I definitely
not now, but
not now,
I meant in a show.
But I definitely want to come. I want to say for the record to all of the artistic people in the Seattle community who are watching this right now, I definitely want to see you in Cabaret for sure.
Thank you so much.
I mean, for sure, I want this. I 100% would pay for it. Okay, this is super. All right. How about this one? My 15-year-old son is autistic, and he really struggles socially. The person is saying, I've struggled with finding the balance between helping and changing and accepting. You want to talk a little bit about parents and children and that relationship as it surrounds autism?
Yeah. And this is always such a difficult, sensitive conversation. I think, right, a parent probably always knows their child. A parent always knows their child best. A parent knows their child better than anyone else in the world knows their child. But a parent doesn't necessarily know what it feels like to be autistic better than anyone else, I think is fair to say. So what I always recommend parents do is to find autistic adults, right? Because autistic people, we're not just autistic when we're kids and then all of a sudden we turn 18 and we just poof, disappear in a puff of smoke to never exist again, right? Every single autistic child, hopefully, is going to grow up to become an autistic adult. So I think the best thing an autistic, or a parent of an autistic child can do is to find autistic adults in their community to reach out to and to just become friends with and learn from and socialize from, or read books by autistic adults. Right. I think those are really the best things you can do for your child. And then I always lean towards finding ways to encourage your child while letting them be themselves. If your child wants to socialize with people and wants to form relationships and make friends, it's great to find ways to help them to do that in ways that are comfortable for them. And that might look, maybe they want to just, be standing in a circle with a group of friends where they are not maybe contributing verbally into the conversation, but they are just participating with their energy by being part of the circle. That is so great. Yeah. If that is what they want to do, there's nothing wrong with that, and that's perfect. They don't need to be participating in the conversation. They can participate in the conversation without speaking in the conversation. So I would say figure out what your child wants, and then find ways to help them do the things they want in ways that are safe and comfortable to them.
Yeah. And let me ask this, because someone else is asking about an autistic preschooler. Do you feel like that advice is good for
Any
teenagers and little kids and littler kids?
Absolutely, I think so. I absolutely think so. And even with preschoolers, find autistic adults to connect with, because they've already been through the special education system.
Yeah.
They have been through it all, and they can help you do it all. And not only have they been through it all as a parent, but they've been through it all as the kindergartner and first grader and second grader sitting in those IEP meetings. So they can help you to figure out how to do this in a way where your first grader and second grader and third grader feel respected and feel like they are active parts of the IEP meeting rather than just being talked about, which doesn't always happen. I think even with the professionals in special education, that's not always how they're taught. That's not always the way things happen normally.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Your book is very interesting, because I was equal parts really, really frustrated and angered on your behalf, and also really uplifted, because you're amazing, because of, because the book is so positive and in the face of rather a lot that isn't positive.
Thanks.
Yes, which is amazing. All right, so I think we have time for one more question, which is this, and it's one that I think is going to tie our whole evening together, which is to talk a little bit about how autism is represented on stage, and the way in which it often, as you said, non-autistic actors are playing those parts, but the ways in which these scripts are written, to begin with.
Yeah, I think, let me find ways of doing this without naming authors, because I know even people in this room are friends with very well-known authors. You in specific. So let me find ways to answer. But I will say often autistic characters are written, or disabled characters, any disabled characters. Disabled characters are often written by authors that don't have disabilities, and oftentimes there's not even a lot of research done in reaching out to the disabled community, because an author doesn't necessarily, that's not the first thing they think of as their job. Their job is to write a good story, and a story lots of people are going to buy, right?
Yeah.
That's their job. But often what ends up happening is when a non-disabled author writes a book or a story or a play or a movie about disabled people, and they think that their one job is to sell a lot of books or get film rights and things like that. The easiest way to do that, I think, with disability is by othering people with disabilities. So I think that's most often what happens when we read stories about disability. I think about the book You Before Me, even. Does anyone here know the book You Before Me, which was also a movie, where a disabled person kills themselves so as not to be a burden onto others? Right? I think about books like Wonder, which I see this month has been Disability Awareness Month, I guess. I didn't know that before this year, but I've seen it everywhere now. And I've seen Wonder, the book Wonder, everywhere, right? Which was also written by a non-disabled person, was turned into a movie where a non-disabled person put on prosthetics to pretend to be disabled. And Wonder is another one of those stories where they other the person, they other the character so much that it's really damaging.
Yeah.
And othering makes it so hard to find common ground and see people as human and connect with people. So that's why I think it's really, really important that we start buying and reading and recommending books by disabled writers who can show disabled people as being sexy and smart and powerful and having their own agency and being just as human as everyone else. because authenticity, which you can only really get when you include a community in conversations about itself, authenticity is powerful, authenticity is sexy, and you get so much more incredible, beautiful nuance when books are authentic and when books are authentically written, I think.
Yeah, and I want to see it on stage. And this question in particular references Dear Evan Hansen, and I read that and thought, there's not a disabled person in Dear Evan Hansen, but yes, there is. And that's part of the point. I've seen it, and it didn't, it didn't occur to me. I mean, Amadeus is another really good example. I have seen the show many times. I have never seen a person who, to my knowledge, was autistic in that role. And that changes the whole show.
I think this whole Amadeus changes so much when you cast an autistic actor, because everything we know about Mozart, right? I don't know. First off, I'm a horrible human being. I've never seen Dear Evan Hansen, so I can't comment on it too much because I've not seen it. But yes, changes the whole show with Amadeus, because we know Mozart lacked executive function. We know that he did not understand how to fit into these social boxes and these social rules and hierarchies that the court put in place in front of him. We know that Mozart was really shunned for not understanding the social rule book. So it changes the whole show so much. Yeah, the other thing I was just realized the other day, I'd never thought about before in my life, even the Phantom of the Opera. I'd never thought about that till like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Phantom of the Opera, they have someone who's non-disabled putting on a facial difference and showing how shunned they are and how different they are because they have a facial difference.
Yes.
And how much different and better and more exciting would that show be if they cast someone with an actual facial difference, if they cast a disabled person with a facial difference or with any kind of physical disability, a limb difference, in the role of Phantom of the Opera. Wouldn't that be brilliant? And wouldn't that be so much more exciting and change the way we feel about the show than just having a very handsome peak of privilege, Broadway darling, physically fit young man painting on facial differences?
Never thought of that. Okay, I wouldn't put you in charge of all Seattle theater.
I would do it.
Okay, I hope that you would. I'm mindful of time, so I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to say this book has been out for like 14 hours, so this is day one. There are lots of opportunities to read the book and then attend a second event so that you can ask more questions and have more conversations. The book is coming, so and as we know, it sells out. So buy several copies because you don't want to miss out.
Buy copies and give them to your friends too, who you think might like the book.
Yeah.
And they have printed a second run a month ago, which will be being mailed out, I think, very, very soon.
Yes, absolutely.
And they're printing a third run now, so they're trying to catch up as quick as they can. Yeah. And it's a good problem. We're so lucky that we have this problem.
It is a good problem to have, and it's a well-earned problem. It is a problem that you deserve to have.
Thank you.
Because it's a really great book. You're doing a fine and stand-up job.
Thank you so
nice
much.
Work. Yeah.
Come grab things on your way out. If you would like anything from the front of the stage there, come grab something, and then make sure to scan that QR code from Third Place Books as you leave, or I don't know if online virtually you have a way to do that as well, or if it's a link, but make sure to do that because Third Place Books has been so awesome in working with the publisher of the book to make sure that even though it sold out so much faster from pre-orders than we expected and we don't have physical copies tonight, that they're going to get you, in addition to the physical copy that I'm happy to still sign if you put a comment in the orders, they're going to get you instantly, in addition to that, a free e-reader version so that you can start reading right away.
So you can go home and start reading tonight. Okay, imagine confetti falling from the sky. Imagine it. I know you can do it. You did awesome.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you
all.
so much, everyone.
Come on, follow me. There's something I want you to see. Walk through the dark backstage. Step into the spotlight's beam. This is where our story begins. Face it all, don't be afraid. Don't let them rain on your parade. Take up space and speak your mind. You don't need to